and search for CSS validator. Here's the first link. So we have the same interface. We can validate our CSS code using an address or by file upload or direct input. Now in this case, we have embedded all of our CSS code inside our HTML markup. But as our web pages get more complex, we want to separate our CSS code into separate files so our code is better organized. We'll talk about this in more detail in the future. So for now, I'm going to copy all of our CSS code and then go to the third tab, paste it over here, and validate it. So we don't have any errors. Everything's perfect. So this is all about validation. Validation is very important. If your web pages aren't displayed as expected, always start with a quick validation because this can often point you in the right direction. All right, that brings us to the end of this section. In the next section, we're going to explore HTML in more detail. We're going to continue our web development journey and explore HTML in more detail. So in this section, we're going to cover the essential HTML elements you need to know to build web pages. You will learn all the elements used for displaying text, links, images, lists, tables, as well as container and structural or semantic elements. Even if you know the basics of HTML, I would still encourage you to watch this section thoroughly because a lot of people don't use these elements the right way. So let's jump in and get started. Earlier in the course, I told you that we use the head section to give browsers and search engines information about a web page. So let's explore it in a bit more detail. I'm going to start with a blank document. Now let me show you a cool trick. If we type an exclamation mark and then press tab, we get a basic HTML boilerplate, which means a basic HTML template. So on the top, we have our doc type declaration. Below that, we have our HTML element with the lang attribute, which is a common best practice. Next, we have our head section with a bunch of elements we're going to talk about in a second, followed by the body section. So this is a very basic HTML boilerplate. Now, what do we have in the head section? Well, we have a couple of meta elements for giving information about this web page. The first meta element is for defining the character set. What is a character set? Well, computers don't understand characters like A, B, C, and so on. They only understand numbers which are represented in the binary format, zeros and ones. So using a character set, we can map a character to a numeric value. The first character set that was designed was the ASCII character set, which is short for American Standard Code for Information Interchange. ASCII can only represent the characters in the English language, so it's very limited. So over here, different character sets have been created to represent more characters in international languages. The character set that we use most of the time these days is UTF-8, which can represent almost all characters in the world. So back to our code. With this meta element, we're defining the character set used in this HTML document. Okay. Now, below that, we have a meta element for configuring the viewport. The viewport is the visible area of a web page. So it is this area over here. Obviously, on a mobile device or on a tablet, our viewport is smaller. But here on desktop, we can change the size of the viewport by resizing the browser. So now our viewport is smaller. Okay. Now back to our code. With this element, we're defining the initial width and zoom factor for the viewport. We'll talk about this in more detail in the future. For now, all I want you to know is that we need this element so our web pages look good on all devices, mobiles, tablets, and desktop computers. So as a best practice, every web page should have at least these two meta elements. But we have additional meta elements. Let me show you. So if you type meta, in this list, you can see all possible meta elements. For example, we have this element for defining keywords on a web page. So let's select this. Here we can type multiple keywords like HTML,